Hi, everyone. Okay, so Chapter 10 talks about two different types of interest-bearing liabilities. Okay, we have liabilities with principal due at maturity, and we have liabilities with installment payments. Okay, so the first one, liabilities with principal due at maturity. There was a question that we did for E10-5 that had liabilities with principal due at maturity. And we see that when it says, by issuing a 9-month note payable at 5% interest payable at maturity. Okay, so what that means is the people, whoever took out this loan, at the end they have to pay this $250,000 back, and then they have to pay all this interest that they collect at the end. So they have to pay back the main and then all the interest. Okay, so when we go through this, we see that there's the original loan that's being taken out. So that you would, in this case, the people who are taking out the loan would debit cash and credit notes payable. And then over time, they would accumulate interest. And at the very end, you see that they debit interest expense, see how much interest, credit interest payable, and then they turn around and say, we're going to pay all that interest back. We're going to pay all $9,375 of interest, as well as we're paying back the original loan. And that's how banks make money. They charge interest. Okay, so this is liabilities with principal due at maturity. Okay, in the next case, we have liabilities with installment payments. Okay, so this one is a tricky one. Okay, let me get a good page for this. Here we are. Okay, so what I think a good page for this is right here. It's on page 10-16, and they use this chart. So this one we see a standard $250,000 and then interest that you're paying back at the end. This one is a little bit more complex than that. So it's blended principal and interest payments. What that basically means is that every month they've agreed to pay back $2,210 as a cash payment. This cash payment is made up of interest as well as it's made up of principal, which we know that principal is the original amount that the company borrowed. Okay, so it's like they're paying back the loan, they're paying back the principal, plus they're paying back the interest. Okay, and these things change over time. So what this looks like, if you're to do this chart, you are going to see, okay, so cash payment. Every month, they pay back $2,210. Okay, but this $2,210 is made up of interest and principal. Reduction of principal. Just going off of this page. Okay. So to figure out how much of this $2,210 is of interest and how much of it is principal, how much is it about the actual loan, we have to do a bit of a calculation here. So we know that interest, how we find interest, we call this D. Interest times the rate times the amount over 12. Okay, so we know we are calculating our interest based on our principal balance. So if our loan was $120,000, we would calculate our interest by saying, okay, that there, 120,000 times the 4% times 1 over 12, because it's an annual rate, is $400. Okay, so we know that we're paying $400 worth of interest on this first pay period. If we know we're paying $400 in interest, we know our cash payment at the end is $2,210. Our reduction of principal, so how much we're actually paying back of this loan, is $2,210 minus $400. So $2,210 minus $400 to get $1,810. Okay, so that means of this $2,210, This is how much interest you're paying, and this is how much principal you're paying. That means the next month, our principal, so our total loan, is $118,190 because we paid a chunk of it back, right? So now, when we have our next cash payment, say it's March 1st, we know we're still paying, it's a fixed cash payment of $2,210. To find our interest, we say, okay, what is our principal balance? Plug that in there. It's our principal balance times the rate times 1/12, so 118,190 times 4% times 1/12. Only the D changes here to get 394. Then you see, okay, well, if we're paying 394 in interest, how much of the actual principal are we paying back? 2,210 minus 394. We get 1,116. And then you would say, okay, at the end, this is how much is left to pay back, and it just continues and continues and continues. If you see every year or every month, this is a fixed cash payment, but you see over time that these actually, that your interest is going down because your interest is calculated on your principal because your principal is going down, and your reduction of principal, so the amount you're actually paying back is going of your loan is going up. Okay, so your interest is going down over time. Your reduction of principal is going up because you're paying less interest and more principal. And your principal balance, your total balance of your loan, is going down. So that's why it's called blended. This one here, it's fixed, right? Because we're saying we're paying this big chunk at the end. We just leave this whole thing to the end. And we have a fixed rate. We're just going to calculate the interest based on this fixed principal rate. 250,000 times 5% times however many months, and at the end, we pay it all back. This is blended because it's just, there's a lot going on here. Okay, so my advice to you, do this question to understand the liabilities with principal due at maturity, and try out this chart to do liabilities with installment payments. Okay, I hope that helps. If you have any questions, please email me. Okay, take care.